Hello, Michael Szalapski here, and today we're going to be making paint splatters in After Effects with Trapcode Particular. We have our comp, a composition-sized solid, we've applied Particular, and we're jumping straight into the Particular Designer. First things first, we're going to set up the primary system to place and color our paint splatters. So we'll get a box emitter that's about the same size as the frame, which in this case, I'm making a 1920 by 1080. And we're going to make it not too deep, about, 400, just a little bit shallower. This way, we'll have splatters happening pretty much everywhere. We don't want them moving much, but we do want a tiny bit of motion for a reason I'll explain later. So I'm going to set their velocity to 10 and the randomness to 90%. This means the particles will have a velocity anywhere from 1 to 19. We want them to have some vibrant colors in our paint splatters. You can choose your brand colors or, your favorite colors or whatever, but Trapcode Particular now comes with a bunch of nice color presets, and I'm going to choose this one. Really quick, I'm going to turn all the environment physics off by turning this air density to 0. It shuts this whole section off. As much as I love the organic beauty that this system can get you, we don't need it for this project, and the fewer the calculations, the faster. We don't need this many particles either. That would be a lot of paint splatters, so I'm going to set this value to, let's say, 0.7 particles per second. And we don't need them to have a very long life either. We're just emitting quick splats, so I'll set the life to 0.2 with a randomness of 50%. And that does it for our primary system. Not very exciting yet, but hang on. Next up, we'll set up the particles that will spawn our paint streaks. We'll create a new system, and right away, let's keep things tidy and rename it. We'll call it Splatter Paths. These are going to be spawning from the primary system, and for the amount, we're going to set it to from parent speed and the number to 1000. And this is why we set a slight velocity variation on the initial particle system, so our splatters will have some variation here in size and amount. We do want them to inherit the color of their parents, so we'll set that option here, but we don't want them to inherit any of that velocity from their parents, so we'll set that to 0. We do want them to have some motion, but only to the sides, like left and right and up and down, not towards or away from the camera. So we'll set the motion to disk with a velocity of 360 and a randomness of 85%. Now we don't want them to just fly out forever, so we'll adjust the velocity over life curve to look something like this. That looks pretty good. And speaking of their life, let's make it 1 second with a variation of 50%. This will make our paint streaks have some nice randomness to their lengths. And we do want them to have some random motion as well, instead of just be perfectly straight. And we want them to drift a bit downward as if there's some gravity. So we'll add some drift, spin, and some displacement. Now we don't need that displacement to be crazy. We'll just set it to displace only 40 and have that displacement fade in over 3.5 seconds. And we don't need spin or drift in X. We just need the drift to be in Y for gravity. I'll put that about, say, 12. There we go. That looks like some decent splatter motion. Now let's actually make those trails. Instead of going through the tedious setup of making a trails system from scratch, we can start with the preset. Trapcode Particular comes with a bunch of presets over here, so be sure to check them out sometime. But for today, we just need this option in the basics section called Aux System New. But don't click it. Clicking a preset will load it in place of what you've got. Alt-clicking will add a preset to your scene. Now, we'll need to specify that it's coming from our second system instead of the primary system, and we've already got some nice little trails going on. Let's rename this system to Splatter Trails. It's already getting color from the parent system because of the lovely preset, but obviously we need to set it to normal instead of screen since this is paint and not glowy magic particles. We'll set the number of particles to from parent speed and 20. We don't want perfectly filled in lines, and you'll see why later. And we don't want any motion from the parent particles, so we'll turn that to 0, but we do want a bit of velocity. Again, we'll set it to disk and a velocity of 2 with a randomness of 100%. Velocity over life curve will be at full strength for a bit, and then we'll just drop it off and stay off. We only want the paint to spread out just a bit, so it'll be full and then nothing. We do want them to stick around longer though, so we'll set the life to 8 with a randomness of 10%. That will make it so when the trail fades off, it doesn't do it perfectly linearly. We're adding imperfection to make things more interesting. And we do want them bigger, so we'll set the size to 6 with a randomness of, say, 25%. Now, we don't want them to just pop off either, so we'll set the opacity over life to go down. Now, we don't have to do this manually. There's a nice preset in here called Offset Slope that will work perfectly for us. This makes the opacity hold for a bit and then smoothly drop off. Now we can turn the the first two systems off since we don't need to see them. And we're just missing the center, the main part of the splat. So we'll create a new system, again from the preset. We'll name this center splats. Particles per second we'll set to 400, so we get a nice bunch of them. Velocity to 25 with a randomness of 85, so we get some irregularity to that splat shape. Again, we don't want it to move much, so we'll adjust the velocity over life curve to be up for a tiny bit and then drop off to nothing and stay down. So it'll just move at the beginning, and then it won't move at all. We want them to stick around about as long as the trails, so we'll set the life to 8 with a randomness of 10%. And we want these a lot bigger. We'll set the size to 28 or so with a randomness of 50%. Now, we don't want them to pop on suddenly. It kind of needs to splat on, so we'll adjust the size over life to grow up quickly and then stop. And again, we want them to fade off when they're done, so we'll set the opacity over life to the preset of Offset Slope. And there you go. Although it's still got that glowy core thing, so we'll set the blend mode to normal. There we go. Much better. But it doesn't quite look like paint yet. Or at least not like wet paint. So let's apply roughen edges. Just at the default settings, you can see that it blobs all these irregular particles together. It makes them look much more like liquid. Tiny problem with the particles on the edge though, is that it'll roughen those edges too. This can be quickly solved by applying CC Reptile at unfold mode with some extra pixels on all the edges, and that'll clean that right up. So there we go. We've got some lovely paint splatter particles put together into the relatively simple setup in Trapcode Particular. Feel free to adjust this setup how you like, add more particles, more movement, and do whatever you want. Add randomness, go crazy.